Eddie Howe going toe-to-toe with Pep Guardiola in the only way he likes to, but maybe just falling a little bit short. Bruno's performance is causing an absolute shitstorm on Twitter in the aftermath, and the defensive brick wall we were all maybe wondering, could it do what it did last season? Well, I think the proof was there in the pudding. It was a defeat on Saturday, but I don't think it'll be many this season. It's the last word, so Newcastle fans, there's plenty to talk about, so if you don't want to miss it, do me a favour and stick around. Welcome back to Black and White Banter, you lovely Newcastle fans from wherever you might be watching. Now, I normally start these videos by saying, hope you're having an amazing week. You're probably not having an amazing start to the week as I record this video, because we had to unfortunately watch something that very, very rarely happens supporting Newcastle under Eddie Howe. We lost a football match, and if you're anything like me, and you had to go at the dictionary to figure out what the word lose and lost means, basically we got 0 points from a Premier League game on Saturday. 0. Absolutely zilch. I know, it's absolutely mad. But it doesn't happen very often. And we were playing a team that have won 4 trophies in pretty much the last 4 months. So it's not as if there was too much shame in it. But before we get into the ins and the outs of Saturday's performance, Newcastle fans, do me a favour, drop down and give us a little likey Lou. That always goes a very, very long way and helps my video get to a couple more people at least. And if you like my opinion by the end of this, whack that subscribe. There's going to be more videos coming up. There has been some new incoming signings as I'm recording this, but I wanted to get my last word video done first. It's coming a little bit later in the week than planned, but hey, we all have lives, and I certainly do, and it's been a bit of a hectic start of the week. So, my first thoughts before I get into the finer points of Saturday's game. More positives than anything else. Positives in defeat, which you don't always say. As I just mentioned earlier, we were playing one of the best teams in the world, one of the best teams in Premier League history. There's not many teams win 4 trophies in such a short space of time of what they have, and we know how good they are. They will be the best team in the Champions League this year, and that's the level of opposition we had. But I tell you what, we went toe-to-toe with them in so many areas. And on another day, with a little bit of quality in that final third, it might have been different. It might have. Did Man City deserve the points? Yes, they did. But were there plenty positives to come from the performance? Yes. And if we can go toe-to-toe with a team like that, who were fearing us to a degree, Pep Guardiola said as much in his aftermath, and put on such a respectable performance a year and a half after we were fighting relegation and looking doomed as the owners first came in, then that's not half bad. That is not half bad. And we've still got Man City to play at our place, where I'm sure things might look a little bit different, as they did at St James's Park last year against City. So, what were the finer things to come away from the game, as I always like to talk about on this last word? For anyone who's never watched one of my last word videos, I will dissect some of the finer points to condense down into this video to rein in on a little bit closer. The first one for me was Eddie Howe's tactics. Now, Eddie Howe decided to go toe-to-toe with Guardiola in the only way he likes to play with his Newcastle team, and that is press from the front, high intense, and give them a go. And I will be grateful, forever be grateful, to be able to watch my Newcastle team when I go places as hard as Man City like I did on Saturday, and not fear that we're going to get battered by putting every man behind the ball. We actually have a go, and that's one of the best things about our transformation. But I think it's fair to say, sometimes when you play Pep Guardiola at that game, it can work. And I've got no doubts about it. We will have our day against Man City. Eddie Howe has never won against them. But I think it will come eventually. Sometimes it can work, sometimes it can't. Now, I think on Saturday, us playing the way we tried to play just fed into Man City's liking a little bit. And all I mean by that is, we know how Man City like to play with all of the ball. Very similar, very quick. They don't like to give up and surrender possession like Eddie Howe doesn't. But the way we played, as I talked about in my pre-match, our striker pressing the goalkeeper, our wingers pressing the centre-backs. That then means Bruno, Tonali and Joe Linton pushed up to mark the rest, and that leaves a gap. Now, normally one of our centre-backs will move into that central defensive midfield area to cover that gap. That left Foden and Alvarez not necessarily in direct 2-on-1 situations, but feeding between them lines and in a hell of a lot of space in their final third. And we saw it in lots of different pockets. And it doesn't always work. I think as I touched on at the start of this video, if we had a little bit more quality in the final third, it could have. It was very much as I came out the stadium. Yes, Man City were the better team, but it was a what if. Callum Wilson run on one-on-one with two men behind him. What if he'd made the right decision and laid that off rather than the ball ended up going backwards to the left? What if Almiron had a bit more quality when he was in some promising areas? What if Bruno had got a better shot off rather than that P-roller that we saw in the second half? And that was not this Newcastle team at its optimal. And Eddie Howe tried to play Pep Guardiola in his almost all-out attack game. And on another day, as I said, it might work. You can play Man City two ways. You can sit back and play them on the counter, or you can have a go. We went for the latter, and I just think it played into Man City's hands a little bit on Saturday. So Guardiola won that tactical battle, but I fully respect Eddie Howe for sticking to his principles, and that was one of the biggest things I took away from the game. I commend Eddie Howe for allowing me to stand in the terraces, boozed up on Saturday night, watching my Newcastle team have a go at the best team in world football. And unfortunately, it just was a little bit short on this occasion. Next big talking point that's come away from Saturday's game, a lot of people are raining in on social media on individual performances. Now, Bruno is one of them people. Now, admittedly, on previous videos, I have talked about how I think Bruno's performances have dropped off a little bit. Now, it was actually a friend of mine when I was having a debate about Bruno who pointed out that maybe his performances haven't necessarily dropped off loads. It's more just the players around him have improved. So I went away, as I always like to do, and did a bit more digging in this. And to be fair, I think there's some truth in that. Now, if you look at Bruno's stats pre-ankle injury to post-ankle injury, and the amount of fixtures is almost the same, 19 to 15. Some of Bruno's stats, and I've only got 3 that I can put on the screen, are actually a little bit better since his ankle injury. Which, you look at stats only a certain way. Now, as I'm recording this video, Bruno has actually responded to a tweet today which has gone absolutely crazy. Everyone's talking about it, from a page called NUFC 360 on Twitter. He responded and then deleted, basically saying Newcastle fans have short memories, look at where we were, we've just played one of the best teams in the world. And he's basically had a rant and then been told to remove it from, obviously, his media team and whatnot. Now, the first thing I want to say on this one is I totally understand his frustration. I think Bruno has probably seen comments flying in since Saturday, and he's not happy about that. But what I will say is this particular page that shared this, NUFC 360, the post that he was responding to, I don't think deserves the criticism that it's getting, the unfollows, the blocks. I read it as a page that has got so many hundreds of thousands of followers through creating debate in the supporters group. I think it's just discussing the fact that criticism has been flying in since Saturday, and is that really, really warranted? I don't think NUFC 360 were actually criticising any players with this post. They used a photo of the 4 players that have been getting talked about, even from my friends coming back from Man City on the bus, Almiron, Dan Burn against Foden on the left-hand side, Joe Linton not putting in the best shift, particularly in the first half of Saturday's game. And I don't think NUFC 360 deserved the criticism that post is getting. They weren't saying that Bruno had played shite. And trust me, I have seen some awful stuff about Bruno. I've even seen someone say he was playing with football boots full of sand on Saturday. So I don't think the page, which I've got no affiliation to at all, by the way, I've got no affiliation to any content creators. If there's one thing you'll know about me, I've never even spoken to one before. Even when I was in America with them, I never spoke to them. I just don't think that page and that particular post deserved the criticism they got. It was just actually asking the question, is criticism that has come been deserved? Now, that shows to me that Bruno is hearing the things that are being said, but I do think that maybe, look at Tonali, the sort of player he's been since he's come in. You look at Joe Linton putting in, generally speaking, a solid performance every single game. We as a team have evolved since Bruno first came into the club. When Bruno came into the club, he took off faster than we expected, like a rocket. But he was playing in a poor team, and some of his performance were probably even more highlighted. He's back heel against Southampton for his first goal for the club. His last-minute header against Leicester. He was brilliant. Now, have we seen that Bruno for a little while? Probably not. But I don't think we're at the point where we need to be worried about his performances. I just don't think he's put in maybe a 9 or a 10 out of 10. But I honestly believe if you would ask Bruno the question about his own performances himself, he would say the same. He played with an ankle injury for most of last season to get us over the Champions League line, which you've got to command. But we are still looking for that full optimal Bruno to be back. But obviously, he's not taken well to some of the criticism coming his way. And I do think some of it on social media is absolutely ridiculous. Like, yes, some of these players might not be absolutely smashing it out the park every single game. But with perspective, we have just played the best team in world football, come away with a very respectable 1-0 defeat that could have been different on another day, as I said earlier in this video. And Bruno put in a solid shift in that midfield that contributed to such an organised and disciplined performance. And we just beat Aston Villa 5-1 the week before. So we are allowed to comment on players' performances. That's one thing I don't like to be made out. You say one bad thing about certain players in this Newcastle squad and people want to put a gun to your head. We are allowed, as fans, to talk about a player's performance. It doesn't mean that we badmouth on them. It doesn't mean we dislike them. It doesn't mean that we're getting on the backs. We can only judge what we watch on the pitch, and we talk about that after. But some of the stuff's been ridiculous. But I do think, on the topic of Bruno from Saturday, I don't necessarily think he's been playing terrible for us lately. I think maybe just the players around him. Not only is he having to adapt to a slightly different system with him and Tonali now, looking to rotate and switch, as I talked about after the Aston Villa game, and that will progress as the season goes on. But he does have players that are propelling around him, and maybe he's just not in the spotlight as much as he was. I don't know. Give me your thoughts on Bruno in the comments. A very, very positive from Saturday, moving on to my next point, has to be the defensive performance. Now, some of us might have been wondering, is this Newcastle team capable of replicating that foundation that got us Champions League last season in that solid back five? And I think if ever there was a match to prove that the answer to that is a categorical yes, it is Saturday's performance at Man City. Eric Haaland is currently the best striker in world football. And he was very quiet. Yes, he had a couple of P-rollers that went past the post that might have gone a little bit closer on another day. But generally speaking, Botman and Shea as a partnership was solid as houses on Saturday. And that can only set us off on a good stead. With the Champions League campaign in mind, where we could be playing the Real Madrids, the Barças, the Milans, for us to put in such a sturdy, organised, disciplined performance on Saturday at the home of the champions is just totally... Not that I needed my mind put at ease, because why would we defend any different than last year? But if any Newcastle fan was answering that question, yes, what Eddie Howe's managed to create here is an absolutely fantastic defensive unit that's actually had additions to it this summer, and it looks like we are going to continue where we left off on that front as well. Absolutely brilliant performance from the lads, and long may that foundation that we all know every good team in football and history has always had, long may that continue. And they proved that it is going to continue on Saturday. Absolute brick shithouses, the lot of them. And that was absolutely wonderful. Final point has to be on the back of our maybe lack of quality in the final third. Now, yes, we were playing Man City, but we did get in good areas that we didn't take advantage of. Does Eddie Howe now look to maybe freshen things up? We've got Barnes, we've got Murphy, we've got Anderson, who I thought looked bright as a button when he came on Saturday. His stats on Saturday in the short time he was on the field in terms of creating chances and just all of his stats in the final third were absolutely brilliant, and he does look bright as a button. I got in a very heated debate with a Newcastle fan on Saturday when I said that I still think, if I was being fussy, our Newcastle team lacks what you'd class as like a Roman central attacking midfielder. He told me that doesn't fit into this system, and I don't understand that statement at all. You need to score goals to win football matches. Elliot Anderson is exactly that. He's a Roman. He can play on the left of the three. He can play centrally just behind the striker. He's a Roman central attacking midfielder. And when he comes on, he does look very bright. So to say that someone with creativity in the midfield does not fit into Eddie Howe's system, I don't buy it at all. And I still understand why Eddie Howe was after James Maddison. I do, and I've always said that. So Eddie Howe might, in the Liverpool game in mind, be looking to make some changes. Maybe Almiron comes out. Because if you take the Aston Villa game into consideration as well, he's been a little bit quieter than some of our other attackers. Is there maybe the possibility there of moving Gordon over to the right and bringing Barnes onto the left? Jacob Murphy, who I was a huge fan of at the back end of last season, how direct he is. He's running, he likes to get a shot in, as we saw in pre-season, and he likes to whip the ball into the box as well. Does he maybe come back in against Liverpool? Eddie Howe's got options there, which is wonderful, but I just think 2 matches in now, he's maybe got some food for thought on freshening things up, and that's a lovely luxury to have. Saturday was all about positives for me. It really was. All I looked at to wrap this video up in that Manchester City team is exactly the benchmark that we can be striving towards. And the fact that we as a team can realistically put Man City as a benchmark because of our own wealth is so exciting, Newcastle fans. Man City are proof that if you've got the right strategic model in place with wealthy ownership, you can reach some dizzy heights that fans could only have wet dreams about. And we need to constantly be striving there. We put in a solid performance when we weren't even at 100%. We were probably at 75%, which is exciting. And the result and who deserved to win that match was probably reflected in our Newcastle team still being maybe 3 or 4 really high quality signings short of that absolutely brilliant team that can maybe go to the Etihad and take the points. So many positives, so much to build on going into Liverpool and Brighton, 2 huge back-to-back games and very tough back-to-back games. And I'm not down on that game at all. I wasn't down on it as I came out the stadium. I wasn't down on it as I woke up on Sunday. Newcastle fans, let me know what your thoughts from Saturday were now that the dust has settled. Let me know what you thought the defensive performance was like. Your take on the Bruno thing. If you think I'm wrong to maybe say that page wasn't as controversial as it's been made out, then let me know. I don't want everyone watching these videos to agree with me. I want some people to debate things. So get those comments in. If you haven't already whacked the like, whack that subscribe, especially if you've stuck around this long. And I will see you on the next video for what will probably be a closer look at a new boy on Tyneside. I'll give you a clue. It's a left back. I'll see you on that one. However, lads.